I'm in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, and I'm standing in front of a colonial home built in 1786. This house has 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and is for sale for $235,000. With enough improvements, this house could sell for north of $1 million. First impressions, obviously this house has seen, a number of renovations over the years. There's random pieces of siding that are patched in. Makes me wonder if there was possibly a porch on the front of this house at some point. The door, while it's beautiful, I don't think it's original to the 1700s. But what I do notice is that a lot of these nails, these are actually hand-cut nails, likely original to that 1786. So we're probably gonna see things like uneven floors, cracked plaster, damaged millwork, maybe even a door that doesn't open that well. Let's get inside and take a look. So we are already seeing some of these uneven floors, but overall the place actually is in better condition than I originally expected. I'm seeing peeling paint, but doesn't really lead me to believe that it's necessarily a structural concern. It's more of an aesthetic concern. One thing that you're gonna wanna do is get a specialist in here to test to see if that is lead paint, just to make sure it's handled correctly. But overall, it's not a very daunting task to patch and paint something like that. And the staircase, I mean, this is usually one of the things that we're seeing on an old home like this, that it's sagging to one side. And frankly, it looks like it's in really great shape. Even the molding and millwork has held up really well. But let's keep walking around and see what the rest of the spaces look like. Coming into this room, you see the peeling ceiling, and looking around, I see signs of mold and mildew. So one of the things between buying an old home and buying a new home is gonna be more airtight. You're gonna have an HVAC system. An old home like this, it's not gonna be as airtight. Maintaining the climate in here is very hard. So when it's wet outside, it's gonna be wet in here. And that's why we're seeing these signs of mold and mildew, the peeling paint, things like that. But looking around, this is where I'm starting to see some of the structural concerns. Here, is actually much higher than over here. The floor tends to ramp up and down throughout the entire space. So for me, one of the options would be to rip this floor up, reframe everything, and reinstall the floor. The problem I see here is that a lot of the molding and the millwork is really beautiful. Everything is still really tight. Nothing is broken or cracked or seems to be sagging. So that leads me to believe that this floor was never flat. It was never really built to a perfectly flat surface. So instead of ripping it up or fully gutting the entire space, I'm gonna celebrate what is here and understand that this is an old home. The floors are gonna roll up and down, and leave them as is. So you're really probably talking about a few $1,000s, just to make sure things are structurally sound. Now, of course, that can sway depending on how poorly it is supported, but based on what we're seeing and the lack of damage in the cracking casing and things like that, I don't think that it's going to be incredibly costly. The more costly option would be to remove this floor, and now we're talking about framing a brand new floor. This is when we're talking about gutting the entire home and starting from scratch. Because like I said, once you address that floor and try to flatten this entire space, you're going to be impacting everything all the way up to the roof line. Speaking of the roof line, I see this wood stove here, which is certainly not from the 1700s, and tied in with some aluminum ductwork, which leads me to believe that we probably have some masonry concerns with this chimney. The chimney's probably in pretty poor shape. Install a nicer wood stove, obviously redress up the millwork around it so it's not this open hole that is obviously not aesthetically pleasing. The more expensive option would be to get into this chimney and address the masonry concerns, repoint the chimney from the basement level all the way up to the roof, and then reinstall a traditional wood burning fireplace. Going back to the conversation around the floor, in new homes, you're oftentimes paying a premium for an ultra wide plank. And in this old home, this is what they had, and this was available to build with. That's further a good reason why we should leave it here and refinish it in place rather than ripping them all out, even if you were to salvage them. And the best part is that floor continues through the entire space, which I think really lend to the character of this home. Looking around, we have mold and mildew, but ignoring that and focusing on the construction of these doors, you have the traditional mortise and tenon joinery here, which is super cool. It makes me think that these doors were original. I think overall, what is really important to note here is that we have a very traditional colonial home. We have an obvious addition off the back of the house, but this space really should be maintained. You know, we have the two front rooms, which are more of a formal sitting space. We have this space right here, which would lend itself to be a great dining room. We have a small room with a private entrance off to the side, which would be a great home office. And then you have a bathroom off to the side here. But overall, the details, the molding, everything is in, I don't want to say great shape, but good shape and salvageable shape. If we can correct the moisture issues, I think this place gets restored. You know, there's beautiful trim, beautiful millwork, the beautiful staircase in the front, and of course the floors. All of that stuff can be brought back to that 1786, where we have this addition back here. This is a perfect opportunity to step from 1786 into 2021. So the addition was built in 1850, and this is actually quite a big kitchen for that era. We have a lot of custom cabinetry, really interesting custom cabinetry. A detail I haven't seen before, these cabinets actually slope backwards up towards the ceiling. Makes me wonder if it was an aesthetic decision or a way to keep their doors from opening by themselves and kind of gravity holding them shut. Great natural light, and talk about a massive fireplace over here. At one point, this was likely a wood-burning fireplace, and then they had put the wood stove in here, but just a massive amount of masonry, some beautiful natural stone on the bottom here. Back here, it looks like we have a possibly 3-season porch, a ton of natural light coming in that space. Over in this way, we actually have a garage out back, as well as an additional staircase and a secondary entrance. So this is a big addition on the backside of a 1786 Colonial. And I talk about bringing this to 2021, more modern day living. And the way we do that is we strip everything out of here. And this becomes modern day kitchen, dining, and living space. Nowadays, that's where the heart of the home is. That's where you're spending all of the time. And I think that this can be a really unique opportunity to do that while having this moment or this experience stepping from the old into the new. So this over here is the exterior wall of the existing house. And I want that experience from stepping from old into the new to be really intentional. And the one way we can do that is by creating a connection to the outdoors. And I'm thinking that we do a full height window on this side as well as that side, pulling that side in. One of the things they did get right, the kitchen location. I think the kitchen location is great. You have a ton of natural light. You have connection to the 3-season porch, which could lead you into future outdoor dining. And even the fireplace, I think, is in a really great location. However, the fireplace is really big and it takes up valuable real estate from our kitchen and dining space. So I say we shrink that down, we make this a modern double-sided fireplace, and we put our dining area on the back side of this. What is now the garage, we would turn into a great big family room. So now you have modern day living in this entire back addition in the kitchen, dining, and living space. So there's two ways to look at this. You know, to make this space livable, we certainly don't need to blow out this entire addition and make this one big living space. While it'd be awesome, let's talk about the more cost-conscious approach. Just renovate the kitchen in the existing location. The fireplace we dress up. We don't add that secondary dining space. Rather, we use the existing dining space in the old part of the home, and the garage can stay as is, and you can utilize one of the front rooms as a potential living room. That's gonna be a lot more cost conscious. You're gonna be somewhere around that $30,000 to $50,000 range to get this kitchen upgraded. But if we are looking at a more massive renovation, there's gonna be structural work, the glass work. You know, at that level, you're gonna be looking at custom cabinetry. You're looking at converting a garage into living space. There's going to be a lot more cost. So we could trickle into that 3, 4, 5, maybe even north of that $100,000 renovation for the back portion of this house. So we've talked about the first floor. I can make some assumptions of what we're gonna see on that second floor of the existing home. So why don't we head up there and take a look at that and then see what this addition has to offer us. I talked about these stairs in the very beginning, and there's a lot of traditional elements I like. The continuous handrail, the curved molding on the wall, the curved skirt. Looking at the bedrooms here, they're actually quite generously sized. So we have 2 bedrooms on the front of the home, and we have 2 bedrooms in the back of the home, but we have that space above the addition. Let's go take a look at that. Where we're standing now is above the existing kitchen. So behind me here, this is actually the existing wall from the old home, and this is part of the addition. You can see the fireplace that was in the kitchen below is actually brought up into this second floor, and we have our back staircase, And as you walk around the fireplace, we have all of this space, which can be turned into additional living space. We actually have a second fireplace on the backside of that first one, but back here, this I think can be a really great primary suite. It's private, it's on the back of the house, it has a ton of natural light and a great view out the back of the building. Being that it's so private, I think that it really makes sense to keep the bedroom in the back side here. As you wake up, you get out of bed, you know, it really makes sense for this center section of this space to be the bathroom. I think one thing that we would want to do is bring in some natural light into that bathroom. So we're gonna wanna add additional windows to this space, similar to how they have them in the bedroom. And we also have this back staircase that we're dealing with. Now the back staircase, you know, we do need to remove it for the bathroom, but being that we're renovating the entire first floor below this level, it does give us the flexibility of adding that staircase where it makes sense. Because I think it is a long walk from this bedroom all the way to that original staircase in the front of the home. I think it would make a lot of sense to have that second staircase specifically for entering this suite. One thing we didn't talk about was the fireplace, or actually the two fireplaces. Now, I think if this was in a different spot and closer to the bedroom, I'd love to give a fireplace to the bedroom. Unfortunately, I don't think it makes sense to move the bedroom closer to the fireplace because you're gonna lose the view out the back. So realistically, I think this fireplace is just gonna go away. We'll leave the masonry structure so we can support the fireplace down in the kitchen, but this is just gonna be encapsulated in the interior walls, you know, as we're framing for the bathroom as well as the closet. And the last space at the end here, I think would be a formal dressing room. Rather than a reaching closet or even a walk-in closet, we have the space here and the square footage here to have a formal dressing room. And I really think it would complement this size primary suite. So realistically, this is all bonus space. We do have the 4 bedrooms in the existing part of the home. So if you were just looking to move in, this space could remain as is, unfinished, and be addressed later on. But if you did want to build a primary suite, you're realistically looking at probably somewhere around $100,000 to add a bedroom, add a full bathroom, as well as all the millwork and cabinetry that goes along with, you know, a true, you know, dressing room. And then of course the structural changes that are going to be required to add that staircase in another location. This house is so interesting, especially the front part of the house being built in 1786. But that addition on the back really gives us a great opportunity to modernize things for modern day living. So if you want to make this home livable, there's a couple things that we need to address. We obviously need to understand and correct the moisture issue. We saw the signs of mold and mildew, the peeling paint. So that's really number one. Secondly, we're going to need to address mechanical systems, plumbing, electrical, HVAC. All of those systems are going to need to be at least repaired, if not upgraded. You're going to want to bring in a professional to take a look at that. Third, there's definitely some structural concerns. So bringing in a structural engineer and then bringing in someone to address those things. And beyond that, there's definitely cosmetic things such as painting and the kitchen upgrades and things like that. But overall, if you wanted to make this place livable, realistically, you could spend $300,000 or $400,000 and do that. And it would really be a great investment for a property like this. Now, if we want to go all out and modernize that back addition, well, now we're getting into a new kitchen, dining space, additional living space, and of course the primary suite. Now this is in addition to everything that the home requires to make it livable. Easily we could be north of $1 million at that point for a substantial renovation, especially when you get into all the additional exterior work. You're going to want to upgrade windows and things of that nature. You know, from my understanding, the Longmeadow real estate market could support a project like this. So if you're willing to put the time and the money into a project like this, it would be a beautiful home. That right there is the existing home, and we're actually standing above the existing condition. We are standing above the existing condition. This is the kitchen. Kitchen is the word. Kitchen's the word. Where we're standing now is actually above the existing oh my God. Where we're standing now is actually above the existing kitchen. I'm just proud of that, so I just gotta do it again.